Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We are tracking a pivotal moment at the United Nations in New York as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a address and many delegations chose to walk out in protest over the conduct of the war in Gaza, while outside the complex large crowds gathered and chanted for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian access, and the scene inside the hall shifted from anticipation to visible tension as rows of seats emptied and cameras captured a chamber that looked unusually sparse. Netanyahu framed the conflict as a fight against armed groups and pledged to continue military operations until core objectives are achieved, while calling for the release of hostages and asserting that security for Israeli citizens remains non-negotiable, and his language signaled determination rather than compromise as he sought to reassure supporters and deter adversaries. And he rejected allegations of unlawful conduct, saying the targets are militant infrastructure and command network delegations that left the hall described their action as a symbolic stance to register objection without severing diplomatic channels, and they pointed to civilians suffering in Gaza, displacement of families and shortages of food, fuel and medical supplies, and they called for credible steps to protect civilians, for expanded aid corridors, and for a political horizon that can lead toward a durable settlement, and they urged international bodies to pursue monitoring, reporting and accountability. The walkout changed the optics and the rhythm of the speech because each exit reshaped the camera angles and soundscape, and viewers saw a contrast between a leader at a lectern projecting resolve and a chamber signaling dissent, and the images moved quickly across global media feeds where threads, short clips and live translations amplified reactions, and headlines framed the moment as a real-time test of diplomatic isolation versus alliance endurance. Behind the scenes, envoys, aides and legal advisors drafted statements and coordinated with capitals to align language for press releases and social posts, and to schedule or reschedule bilateral meetings and corridor conversations, while security teams handled movement flows and ensured the building remained accessible and orderly, and the United Nations once again served as both stage and workshop where public spectacle meets private negotiation. Humanitarian agencies renewed calls for safe, predictable access and requested fuel for hospitals, surgical supplies for trauma care, and steady convoys to reach shelters and neighborhoods under strain, while child protection teams highlighted the impact on schooling, nutrition and mental health, and they repeated that pauses in fighting without reliable logistics cannot meet the scale of need, and that sustained mechanisms are essential for any meaningful relief. Policy analysts and regional experts outlined near-term scenarios, including a tactical pause that could widen into a longer truce, a mediated exchange involving detainees and hostages, and a framework that ties security guarantees to reconstruction funding and governance steps, and each path faces obstacles such as mistrust, domestic politics, and the risk of spoilers who might escalate violence to derail negotiations before they gain momentum. Legal scholars debated principles of distinction, proportionality and necessity under international humanitarian law and examined questions of state responsibility and individual accountability, while noting that fact-finding faces barriers such as access restrictions, contested data and rapidly changing conditions, and they mapped possible venues and procedures for inquiries, and cautioned that legal timelines often lag far behind political and military calendars. Financial and logistics observers tracked ripple effects on trade, shipping and insurance, and warned that sustained instability can raise costs, reroute cargo and depress investment, while border crossing status and fuel availability can swing local prices and humanitarian operations in a matter of days, and markets watch diplomatic calendars for clues because statements, votes and shuttle visits can shift expectations quickly. Civil society groups, faith leaders, students and diaspora networks organize vigils, teach INS fundraisers and dialogue circles aiming to lower tensions at home while keeping attention on the human stakes abroad, and community organizers urged responsible media consumption, donation to vetted relief efforts and participation in lawful assembly, and many groups called for empathy and restraint in public debate, especially during times of grief, shock and anger. Technology platforms moderated surges of graphic content and misinformation, while newsrooms strengthened verification desks to check images, locations and timelines, and educators and librarians promoted media literacy resources to help audiences slow down before sharing, and to encourage cross-checking with reputable sources, and experts reminded viewers that fast-moving conflicts create information fog where initial claims may be incomplete or wrong. For Israel, the message emphasized deterrence, unity, and the pursuit of war aims described as necessary for long-term security, with leaders maintaining that negotiations require robust guarantees, and that concessions made under fire could invite new threats, and for protesting states the message emphasized humanitarian urgency, a ceasefire pathway, and a credible political process that can deliver right, security, and dignity to affected populations, and both sides sought to anchor their positions in law, history, and moral reasoning. In the coming period, watch for clusters of coordinated diplomatic steps such as joint communiques, revised resolution drafts, and new travel by mediators with fresh mandates, while humanitarian indicators like crossing hours, convoy counts, hospital fuel levels, and shelter capacity will reveal whether conditions on the ground are improving or deteriorating, and the balance between pressure and persuasion will shape whether talks stall or advance. The symbolism of a walkout does not decide battles, yet it influences how leaders price risk and how publics interpret legitimacy and cost, and it can narrow or widen room for compromise depending on domestic reactions and international alignment, and the images from this session will likely endure a leader speaking with insistence, a chamber partially emptied by protest, and a world wrestling with the demands of security, justice, and human survival. As we continue to cover developments, we will keep the focus on verified updates, credible analysis, and the lived reality of civilians caught in the middle, and we will follow actions, not only words, such as the opening of aid routes, the protection of medical facilities, the status of hostages and detainees, and the movement of diplomats between capitals and committees, and we will track how these concrete steps reshape the narrative over hours and days and weeks.